Hi, everybody. I'm Yael. I'm super excited to be here. This is a really great crowd. I know there's a lot of talks right now, so thanks for coming to this one. This is Meet Security Planner, or How to Help Your Non-Technical Friends and Family Stay Safer Online. And before we get started, a little bit about myself. My name is Yael Grauer. I work at Consumer Reports on Security Planner, but my background is actually in investigative tech reporting. And that's where a lot of the work I do kind of comes from. So I've done a lot of investigative reporting on companies that say they are very private and secure that maybe aren't. Maybe their marketing's a little bit hyperbolic. Maybe they say they have end-to-end encryption when they actually don't, that kind of thing. And I've written a lot about surveillance. And one of the things I think about a lot is how in an ideal world, I wouldn't have to be here or be doing this work, because products would be secure by design, and everything would be, any kind of data collection would be opt-in, and UX would be really, really great, and you would understand what you were doing instead of it being confusing and opaque. But because that is not the case, we have tools like Security Planner. I consider myself a responsible adult. I get my annual checkups. I just got my windshield wipers replaced because they were fraying. We even had our air ducts cleaned. I'm one of those people who, I give my dog her heartworm medicine every month, et cetera, et cetera. And like most responsible adults, I misplaced my wallet. And a night on the town, I'm sure some of you have done this. And the really annoying thing about it was that we were at 7 different places that night, which is something you're not supposed to admit on stage, but it could have been at the bar or the other bar, or the Uber we took to get to the pancake place, and then it was closed, so we took another Uber. It could have been in 7 different places. I didn't pay for all these cars. I don't know if my friends who I was with are the type of people to contact all these Uber drivers for me. Did you find the wallet? And so yeah, that really sucked, but I got it back. And there was also paparazzi that caught a picture of it for me, but they didn't tell me I had dropped it. But I got it back the next day, and as soon as I got it back, I took out all my credit cards, opened up my password manager, and I wrote all the numbers that I should call if I had to call them. And I started taking all these other precautions too. Bottom of my bag, because I make sure my bags have zippers so that I don't accidentally drop or misplace things. And of course, none of these things would have helped me had I actually lost my wallet, because I didn't do them until after the fact. And so if somebody would have told me, don't you know you're supposed to write down all these numbers in case you lose this, I would have been really mad and probably muted them on Signal. But we see this happening all the time in physical security. People don't get their locks fixed until after the house gets broken into. And we see it also in digital security, where people don't realize they need a password manager until after their password is compromised and they realize they have the same password for all of their accounts and no MFA set up. And so that's kind of what we're working with, is that people have something kind of similar to technical debt, even though they probably don't know what that is. And so we have a tool called Security Planner. So if you go to securityplanner.org, there's a 3 questions that you will answer, and it will spit out a security plan for you. So it's sort of like a choose your own adventure book, but with more homework. We'll be talking a little bit about how we decide what kind of advice to give people, but it's customized and prioritized for those individuals. So I don't know about you, but I've been having really bad luck with Google lately and all search engines. They just don't get me what I want anymore. I feel like they've gotten worse over years. Does anybody agree? So I'll type something in, even when I know the exact name of it, and what comes out is not what I was looking for. It's very annoying. And so it's really hard to tell people oh, you don't know how to do something, just Google it. Because they might not get what they need, which is really annoying. So yeah, we have this 3-part customized choose your own adventure. So when you go to securityplanner.org, the first thing that it'll ask you is what are you on? What tools are you using? This is another thing that annoys me about Google. I'll look something up for Android, and I will get advice for iPhone. It's so annoying. And if you are, I don't know, it's just like I wanted to know how to not get my bike stolen, and I found tips for securing your car. Like, that would be really annoying. And then if you have a baby monitor and you want to make sure it's safe, then you really want to make sure it's safe. But if you don't have one, you don't need to scroll through all of that advice. So we ask people what devices they use. The next thing we ask people is, what is it that you actually want to do? And I think this is really important because when people think about cybersecurity, people think about completely different things. Like, a lot of people will be like, oh, this is about keeping all my information private from different companies. I don't want them to sell me ads. And other people will be like, oh no, cybersecurity is all about ransomware and viruses and et cetera. And then one thing that doesn't get talked about as much when you talk about cybersecurity is like dealing with harassment and stalking. And that's what I think about. Like, that's one of the first things that I think about when I think about cybersecurity is how do you help people who are dealing with harassment and stalking. And so we ask people what it is that they're trying to do so that the advice, again, is tailored to them and their situation. And then we ask them if any of these statements are true. Are you a victim of identity theft? Do you have additional risks because of who you are or what you do? Are you dealing with an urgent digital security threat right now, and a few other things? And some of that is because we might not be the best solution for everybody. Like, if you're a digital filmmaker looking to secure your information and your sources during that project, then you probably need a personalized guide, and there are some out there just for documentary filmmakers. And so that's one of the things that we do. We also have an emergency resources page, because if you're actually having an emergency, you don't need to be filling out a quiz. You need to be on a phone or in a chat with somebody that can actually help you individually based on what it is that you are trying to do. And so we try to kind of outsource to other places that are more equipped to help those individuals depending on what their threat is. And I'm going to pause again and point out that this shouldn't exist. Like, we shouldn't have to have so many people that are dealing with these issues that are largely preventable, not by them necessarily. We shouldn't have to have an emergency resource for digital threats hotline, but that's kind of where we're at. So, and I always try to keep the big picture in mind, like how can we reduce this systemically? What can we be doing as a community? What can we be pressuring companies to do in order to prevent these issues? How should tools be built differently? So yes, you've filled out your choose your own adventure, you've gotten an action plan. This is kind of what it looks like. This person has 29 tips. Luckily, you don't have to do them all at once. You can go back and do them one at a time and check them off. And we'll try to prioritize it based on risk. So we're always kind of tweaking the algorithm for that. I love a lot of digital security guides. I send people to EFF Surveillance Self-Defense a lot. There's one called Zebra Crossing that I really like. But unfortunately, those are great. They're kept up to date. Unfortunately, the internet is sort of a graveyard for abandoned and outdated security guides. And if somebody gets a security guide and the first step is giving them information that doesn't actually work for them because they have an up-to-date OS, they're probably going to stop working on it completely. So we try to keep Security Planner up to date. We have timestamps now, which is really cool. And as far as the actual steps themselves, in some cases we just have a few steps. There's one action that only has one step, but sometimes we have a ton of steps. Our longest one is 11 steps, and that one is about stalkerware. Because people think that their security issue is that they have stalkerware on their phone, but a lot of times they're sharing information with somebody who's telling it to their abuser. So we have to go over that with them. Sometimes they're sharing accounts with that person and they haven't logged out of those accounts or changed those passwords. Sometimes they do have stalkerware and they have to use antivirus software. Actually, Eva Galfrin at EFF almost single-handedly got antivirus companies to start scanning for this stalkerware, so that's actually really cool. And And sometimes it's like there's actually an AirTag or another device that they have to physically search for because it's somewhere that travels with you. So it's either going to be on your person, in your vehicle, in your bag. So we tell people how to look for those and how to scan for them with their phones, because the scanning for it works better or less depending on what kind of phone you have and what kind of tracker it is, unfortunately. So there are a lot of steps there. We also tell people, like, maybe you want to talk to somebody, because I think in cybersecurity, people always think, oh, there's something bad on your device, you need to remove it. But in like taking a trauma-informed approach, sometimes that's not the best situation because it could escalate things, and the best person to understand that is the person who is being targeted. But sometimes it can be really helpful to go over different ideas and bounce them off, so we give resources for that. So yeah, that's our our long one. Normally when I write articles, it's kind of like a persuasive argument where you're like, here's why this is important, and here are the steps to take. But with Security Planner, it's the opposite. We tell people what to do, and then if they're still not convinced and they scroll down to the bottom, we explain, like, this is why you should care and why it's important. And sometimes we have additional resources for people like maybe some of you who want to nerd out on this and figure out what else do I need to know, what are the details, how did you maybe come to these decisions. And so we have internal resources, sometimes we have external resources. We're actually doing a content audit and removing all the outdated ones right now. So that's one of the other things you can get on that site. So how do you actually use this to help your friends and family? I imagine that you would rather help people in a way that's really specific to their situation. So our goal is that if people go through Security Planner, when they come to you with questions afterwards, those are really specific questions that are more interesting for you to answer and are more specific. And the other cool thing is that we are a nonprofit. We're really open to suggestions. So if something doesn't apply to that person or you think it could be written differently, we're always looking for that kind of feedback. And we even have a sort of informal advisory group, which is like a very low traffic listserv on groups.io that I'm going to tweet out and toot out the link if anybody wants to join that and you kind of want to volunteer to do that, to not just help your friend, but everybody else who uses this tool. And it's pretty easy to get on. You just have to fill out a few questions and agree to our code of conduct. There's a couple other things we do under the Security Planner umbrella, and one of them is testing. So I take advantage of the fact that Consumer Reports has a fantastic lab and testing team. And so when I first started, I was like, we should look at VPNs, because I had done some work on VPNs. And I think everybody was kind of tired of VPNs by the end of the project, because we did a ton of tests that culminated in a 48-page white paper, breaking down the differences between them. And then we wrote 3 articles. One was about helping people decide whether they even need to use a VPN at all, because a lot of people use it because they don't actually know what it does. And so they either think they're getting a level of protection they're not actually getting, or getting protection that they already have, things like HTTPS. And so we help people with that. We wrote one article that was about all the issues we found, which was, poor privacy and security practices and hyperbolic claims that kind of had the potential of misleading readers or listeners, actually, because people hear about them on podcasts from people who have affiliate relationships with them. So those aren't always 100% accurate, believe it or not. And then we also told people, like, oh, if you just want recommendations, these are the ones that did well in our privacy and security testing. And I really liked that project because it had a white paper for people to nerd out on. It had articles for people who just wanted kind of the overview. And then we fed the recommendations back into Security Planner. One thing that happens, though, that really annoys me is when we can't give people recommendations, because there's nothing they can do to improve something, because it's a systemic industry-wide issue. And that I started thinking about memory safety a lot when I was freaking out about whether or not I had Pegasus on my phone. Because Pegasus happened, and I do a little bit of kind of high-risk freelance reporting. And luckily, I'm really well connected, and I have friends who, before Amnesty came out with a tool, and iVerify came up with a scanning tool, were able to tell me what to write in command line to figure out if I had it on my phone. But I know not everybody has that, and not everybody would even take advantage of it if they had that available to them. And so my manager and I were kind of brainstorming, and I'm like, what can we do? Like, this is bad. We can't give people recommendations, and we can't even test tools because almost everything is memory unsafe these days. And so what we did was we got all the smartest people working on memory safety that we knew of that we could convince to get into a virtual room. And we had a convening about memory safety, and then we summarized it in a report, which was really fun. Trying to kind of, because a lot of people had different opinions, and so trying to capture all of that was pretty interesting. And now we're in the process of figuring out what the next step is to improve this landscape for everybody and try to hold companies accountable. And I feel like the best way we learn for Security Planner is people who have really strong opinions and constructive criticism telling us what to redo. In fact, we got that from PEN America because they rightly pointed out that our pages on harassment and domestic abuse were telling people to call the police without giving them the nuance about when that may or may not be a good idea for them. And they gave us a resource we could link to, so we did that. So I love it when people tell me you're doing this all wrong and here's how you can do it better, because we can. It doesn't happen instantaneously because Security Planner is translated into English and Spanish, and I don't speak fluent Spanish, so I can't just go in and fix things because I want to make sure everybody has the same experience. I don't want there to be like an up-to-date English version and an out-of-date Spanish version, so it's not instantaneous, but we try to move pretty quickly. And I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions because I'm always looking for ideas on what can we do to improve it, what are people doing wrong, what is the media doing wrong, how do we make this more open and accessible. And I'm also on Mastodon and email, so here's my contact information, and if you have any questions, let me know. I see a question, I see. We have a couple of things. Okay, so the question was for older people who want information as emergency resources. What was it? Only. Yeah, the emergency resources section we don't have like an 800 line for security questions, unfortunately. Emergency resources does link to hotlines, like there's a crisis text line, there's like a games and harassment hotline, which I think is over text, and we link to Access Now's digital security helpline, which I think is over email, actually. That would be great if we did that. We did team up with another organization, the Cybercrime Support Network, I think they're called. I hope I'm not getting that wrong on video. But it was like geared towards older adults, and it was like 4 pared down pages of Security Planner, and people would go around and secure their family members or friends or whatever, of any age actually, because there's a lot of people that don't understand tech who are younger, and a lot of tech savvy adults. But yeah, and then we also have some webinars which are geared for a really 101 audience, and it's on just basic, like how to use multi-factor authentication, password, stuff like that. But yeah, no, we don't have, I don't think there's like a generic hotline for tech problems, so that would be cool. I wonder if we could do office hours. That's actually a really good suggestion. So I've also thought about, I feel like some of the webinars move too fast for some of the people that we've had. Who maybe would be confused if you talked about MFA and mentioned, apps and YubiKeys in one webinar. And so we've been kind of brainstorming. I'm like, what if we did a video, like an animated video that people could rewatch on their own and follow along with? So we're always looking for other ideas for how to reach those people. So yeah.
Two areas that I've noticed for the average person out there that consumer reports might want to take a look at. One is mobile phone companies, Verizon, Cellular, AT&T, where since the average person out there is using MFA through them, and there's some very legal documents and pretty reports that I want to do. I know consumer reports have done a good job of putting pressure on different areas that are problems and that might be one.
Okay, so the question was about the phone companies and people who use MFA when the phone companies are inherently insecure. I think I got that. It's kind of hard to hear, but we kind of shy away from SMS-based MFA, like as a start, and I wrote an article actually on why you should use apps, and a lot of people on our list actually were like, you should only recommend YubiKeys, but a lot of places don't take YubiKeys, and a lot of them don't even have apps. Some of them only have like SMS and email-based MFA. So I think like for a first step, we do tell people like, can you move this to an app? But I don't think the issue is always, a lot of people, SIM swapping is an issue, but I think the bigger issue that we've heard from kind of normal everyday users is that their phone got cut off, or they lost their phone, or they broke up with their partner who they were on their phone plan, or their family's phone plan, or switched jobs or whatever, and they no longer have access to their phone, so they can't enter those SMS codes because they don't have a phone anymore, which is I think that happens probably more often than SIM swapping. We do recommend YubiKeys also in Security Planner. We have not everybody gets the same plan, but like for people that are high risk, we're like, you should really get a security key, but you kind of need 2 security keys, and not everybody's going to pay for it. We list a bunch of free options. But as far as research, I think it would be great to do research on like where is SIM swapping, or which of these phone companies are more, how do they handle this differently? Because I know that, like probably Google Fi, my guess, is the best as far as like if you're being personally targeted. But it's kind of a small minority, the people who use Security Planner who have those issues. But yeah, that's an interesting one. If anybody has questions, and you have to scream them because I can't hear people.
So for Security Planner, is it one plan per account? And I have to send everyone to get their own account, or can I log into like my own account and have like 5 different plans, 5 different failover?
Oh, are there, how many plans? So when you use Security Planner, it gives you a URL that saves your plan. So if you want to just send them that URL, then they'll be able to check that off on their own. We also have PDFs, but they're not, we're actually kind of redoing how we do PDFs because it's not, it turns out that people, I didn't realize this until we went through user testing, and it was really interesting to me, but it turns out that people want, when they check off a PDF, they want it to be checked off on the non-PDF version, and I don't think most PDF readers let you do that, or if they do, I haven't figured it out. Like, we haven't quite worked that out, so we kind of want to redo how we do that so people can have like a printed out plan and cross it off, which a lot of people like to do. You can save your plan with a free account, but you don't have to use it, but that's another way to do it. And then there's also a link that says all recommendations if you just kind of want to scroll through them. So yeah, so I think that more or less answers your question. Okay, cool. Yes.
What are some tips for telling if you need a VPN?
Oh, tips for telling if you need a VPN. Okay, so are you already doing other things? Like, are you already using MFA, a password manager, HTTPS only mode, etc.? Like, I think that's the first thing that I ask people. And then the second is, what do you want a VPN for? Like, what is it that you're trying to do? And I think about this a lot because I went to Knoxville to hang out with some friends, and I met this woman who was a professor. She's really, really smart. She had like 3 PhDs and spoke all these languages. And she was using a VPN because she was worried that her bank account would get hacked if she wasn't on a VPN. So in her model of the world, which I'm not saying is like, I think it's a logical model if you watch people talk about VPNs on whatever Twitch stream you watch and listen to NPR, read all these articles about the next big hack. Like in her model of the world, there was not HTTPS, and her bank information was totally clear, like plain text. And I was like, no, your bank's not going to get hacked. So she wouldn't need a VPN. I use a VPN when I do investigative reporting because I get paranoid about people tracking my IP address. Like if I email them, they'll know how much time I spent on their site. I don't know if they actually would do that, but they could do that. And then I use a VPN when I am at a very tiny coffee shop where I know the person individually who is running the network. Because if I know them by name, they know me by name. I don't necessarily want them to see what I'm doing. So it depends. It depends on what you're trying to do, but I think like for most people who tell me they want to use it for general overall security and don't have a specific threat, like they probably don't need one. It's also really useful for circumvention, which I don't know a lot about because Consumer Reports is very like US and Canada focused, but I went to a VPN convening and everybody there was doing circumvention work. And I actually was writing about VPNs once, and I was in grad school, and I couldn't I couldn't go to a website for a VPN, so I went to Tor, and I said, Tor is illegal in my country, and I got in that way, and then I was able to, but you can also like tether to your phone, like if this is just like a short instance, you can do that. And then there's like other reasons for using it, like I got interviewed for a story about whether you need a VPN when you look at porn. And one of the things that didn't make it in the story, but that I thought was a really good use case that somebody brought up to me afterwards is, I don't want my housemates to get targeted ads for things that I am looking at. And so like that's a little bit, I don't know, there's kind of some weird use cases like that. And then of course a lot of people use it to try to get Netflix or whatever in other countries. And in my experience that hasn't worked consistently. Like when I get it to work, it stops working the next day. So I don't recommend it. Well, of course, we wouldn't recommend anything illegal in Consumer Reports, but also as far as like whether it works or not, I don't think it consistently does. But if it does, let me know. I'm curious. So, did that more or less answer your? Okay, cool. I've always wanted to say I have time for one more question because I heard a comedian making fun of people who said that once. It's just this random thing you can say in conversation. But I think we do actually have time for one or two more questions. Or not. Thank you so much, you guys. This was really fun.